So today I am going to be reading 1-star reviews of the series finale of Supernatural. These are user reviews on IMDB, and I don't have it sorted like by star rating. These are just show all. Most of them are 1 stars. I'm going to be reading the 1 stars because it deserved less, but 1 star was as low as it would go. Here we go. I wish they never resumed shooting after the COVID lockdown. COVID tried to give us this one blessing. Jensen, you were right to hate this ending. So he had at a fan conference, probably like about a year ago, like right before they couldn't do it anymore. He was asked a question of what if he knew the ending and what his general thoughts about it were. And basically his response was that his first impression was that it did not sit well with him. He didn't like it. He wasn't a fan of it. So he decides to talk to Eric Kripke, who's the creator of the show, but is no longer actively working on the show. And he's like, it's just not feeling right to me. Kripke responds back that, convincing him that it's a good idea. I can't say whether it was the exact same thing that actually ended up happening, but that's the backstory. Okay. Might be fun if you enjoy watching a beloved character be tortured and set on fire. Because they clearly think that driving around in a car alone for 40 years could be someone's idea of a blissful existence. So I understand that. I would probably even presume that the original idea was to have everyone in heaven to greet Dean. Maybe not greet him like the first person, but that they would be there. And I can understand why that didn't happen. But the exclusion of Cass, unforgivable. I wish I died before this aired so I could die in peace. Pulling the ending out of a Cards Against Humanity deck would have been better. This is the way the world ends, not with a bang, but with rebar to the back and a Party City clearance wig. That's well written. All the character arcs were forgotten for season 1 nostalgia. It was so out of character. I'd seen someone brilliantly point out that if you looked at the very first episode of the show and said, what would Sam and Dean's lives be like if episode 1 didn't happen? You have the same basic ending as how the show ended. Ridiculous. Someone else said, you could watch the very first episode and then the very last episode and not be confused at all, because it's what has changed. It felt like they laid out every stereotype about the show and the character and chose a couple in each category and based their final episode on that. I love what they said here about it's every stereotype of the show, because that's been honestly one of the biggest problems, is that it seems like the executive creative team, their idea of what the show is and what people love about the show is so different than how the fans view the show and what the fans actually love most about the show, that causes so much of the disappointment. When your ending is this bad, all you can do is pretend the show never even existed in the first place. That reminds me. So a lot of people have said, and for a long time, because the show's been on a long time, is that they should have ended after season 5. That was the time that the original creator, Eric Kripke, was running the show. And it did have a nice little wrap up, but then it's they got another season, so they continued, and then they just sort of kept continuing. But I never agreed with the sentiment of it should have ended at season 5, because I was they're still doing a story. They still, have whatever going on. I haven't watched for the past 5 years, but they were going with whatever they were going with. But after that ending, if ending at season 5 means we would have been spared this series finale, you're winning me over to ending after season 5. Just saying. Only 1 star, and it's for the dog. There aren't words to express how shocked, hurt, and disappointed I feel at the moment. If the directors and writers of this show spat right in my face, I wouldn't feel as stupid and as humiliated as I'm feeling by this ending. I can only recite Cass. I gave everything, at least countless hours through 15 years of my life, for you, and this is what you give to me. I've never felt such anger towards a show or its ending like I did this finale. In fact, I do not count this episode as part of the show because it felt so disconnected from the rest of the show. Honestly, I think that's what most people are gonna do. Worst finale of any show I've ever seen. I'm really, because, you know, like, people, everyone knows, like, How I Met Your Mother, horrible ending. Game of Thrones, horrible ending. And because, like, I think Supernatural is a big enough, I mean, it's not like one of those shows, but I think it's big enough, like, in the world of fandom culturally to become, like, definite on that list. As a fan, for so many years, it felt like I and all the other fans are just jokes to the writers. Again, pointing out the, honestly, disrespect that the creative team has for a huge portion of the fan base. Defying destiny, escaping from the narrative of a cruel god/writer, free will, never heard of any of these things, and it's not like they were the main themes of several seasons, especially season 15. It's not like they called themselves Team Free Will or anything. So yes, just end up right where we started, forgetting anything that happened in the last 15 years. Great job, CW. To the point, to the exact point. Oh, to be loved by someone the same way Supernatural loves killing LGBT characters. And that's the other thing, because the CW is, other than this show, compared to other networks, quite good at queer representation. But when it comes to this show, they cannot do it. Worst ending ever. I never thought a series finale could insult me and the fans so badly. I feel used, betrayed, and extremely disappointed. I can only imagine the absolute rage that I would feel if I had continued watching the show. Because I stopped at the end of season 10. And if I had gone another 5 years, I cannot imagine my rage. I am not someone who gets angry. It's very rare for me, but I cannot imagine my rage. Even with the bar on the goddamn ground, I didn't expect the writers to tunnel under it like gophers. I'm disappointed, but not surprised. We never get what we deserve. It was so bad, it almost feels deliberate. Yeah. They wrote every word. It was deliberate. Jensen Ackles should legally be allowed to commit murder just once as a treat. When I first heard that we're finally letting this show die, I thought a bad finale would be a fitting end. Supernatural as a whole is ridiculously bad, but it's the kind of ridiculously bad that ends up being kind of endearing. I love to hate it, and I hate to love it. The fans are annoying, the plots constantly escalate to the point of being headache-inducing, the misogyny goes on forever, but it has its moments, and honestly, I will miss it. I knew before this week that Supernatural was going to go down in TV history one way or another, but even with all my low expectations, I never thought it could possibly end this badly. This wasn't just a terrible end to a terrible show. This was heartbreakingly awful for everyone who has put time into making Supernatural and anyone who has ever enjoyed it. Fair. And honestly, I think most people had low expectations. I mean, some people were hopeful, and, like, good for you. Most people had low expectations, and most people were still disappointed. The past 15 years have been partly about working on Dean's issues and dependence on Sam, and finally someone told him his worth, only for the finale to ruin it in 44 minutes. Dean went back to caring only about his brother and his car. Such good character development ruined in one episode, worst series finale yet. That's the thing. The thing that people who like Dean like about Dean is this entire journey that he's been on this whole time. And to have him go back to being like season 1 Dean, Which, it's so sad. And that's the surprising thing, too, because you think Dean is the one person that they're not going to treat this dirty. I mean, Cass, you know he's going to get screwed over. Sam could go either way, but Dean, they wouldn't do this to Dean. And yet, Rusty Nail. The utter disrespect to Dean's character development. The utter disrespect to fans with mental health issues who've always resonated with Dean. Yes, 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 yes. The whole idea of to keep going, to keep fighting, to not give up, and then to have Dean only get to experience peace and happiness after he is dead? Who are you? The bar was so low, yet they decided to stab it through Dean's back. The episode retroactively made me dislike the entire show. This show first aired when I was in college, and I have been watching it on and off since then. It wasn't a great show, but it was enjoyable, and I always had a soft spot in my heart for it. Not anymore. This episode was the worst piece of garbage writing that I've seen a show pull in a long time. Literally, this puts Game of Thrones to shame for having such a bad, unbelievable ending. There's no continuity. There's no emotional continuity between the last few episodes, not to mention the entire show before it. What terrible writing. Shame on whoever wrote and greenlit this garbage. You ought to be ashamed of yourselves. I've been hate crimed. Who wrote this finale? Some guy off the street who read the Wikipedia page for season 1 and then decided he could wing it? This ending is a disservice to the 15 years of character development we've seen in Dean, a disservice to the impact Castiel had on the fans and the characters, a disservice to wig makers everywhere. The bar was low, Mr. Dab, but no one asked you to tunnel underneath it. I like this one. I'd like to bleach my brain now, please. I've never been so bored by garbage. This episode is a hate crime. I said what I said. Maybe next time think before deciding this was an appropriate ending for 15 years of character development. A ton of people are mentioning character development, as they should. My predictive text could have come up with a better ending than this. I believe you. The bar was on the ground, and they said, "Let's get digging, boys." And they dug and dug and dug and dug. Horrifyingly empty. Not sure what to say. This finale might have fit the show in seasons 1 through 3. Agree. But that was 12 years ago. But all the heart and the soul that's been building since then was missing. Exactly. Just thrown out. I mean, 15 years. A soul of a show has to change over that much time, and yet this episode played out like it was written at the end of season 1. Yes, it did! Family don't end with blood. Well, none of that came across. Blame COVID all you want, but it just felt like zero heart was put into an ending of a legacy show, and it hurts that my favorite show since I was a teenager now leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. One day, I hope I can look back at Supernatural lovingly, but right now, I feel betrayed. This person knows what they're talking about. I do love that everyone is saying basically the same thing. Because then it's not just like, oh, that's like my personal opinion. It's like, no, that's what we saw and that's what we're commenting on. Which honestly has been what's been happening for 15 years, so. I wasn't even expecting much, but I was given trash. I'm so sorry for Jensen and Misha. Their characters were killed for who they were. Agree. Because, and someone made a very good argument about this. Because if Dean... Then, after what happened with Cass in 2 episodes ago, Dean basically never mentions it again. And once he's in heaven, you can't have Cass show up because then you're just not going to talk about it, and he's right here back from super hell, and here he is, and he's alive, and he just confessed his love for you, but you're still not going to talk about it? No. You can't have him show up at all because clearly that's what's going to happen. Can't do that. I can't believe they aired this. While I can only assume how difficult and daunting it must be to write an ending for such a long-running show, fair, I can say with absolute certainty that a bus full of hyperactive monkeys could have written a better ending than the absolute train wreck of an episode they gave us. Fair. Because literally anything else would have been better. True. So glad Supernatural managed to stay true to itself. Homophobic and misogynistic until the very end. That's what I call consistency. True. The entire time. I was expecting this to be bad, but honestly, it was shocking how bad it really was. This ending feels like it was written back when the show was still in its first season somehow. She's like they are the fourth, fifth person to mention that, probably more. I am still unsure if this finale is actually real or an elaborate fever dream. Also not the first person to say that. Supernatural wasn't good last several seasons, but that series finale just hit the bottom, broke the floor, and descended to writer's hell. I like that. I like that imagery there. Like watching a car accident. Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me, ma'am. Trying to do a video. Okay. Like watching a car accident. No one in the history of torture has been tortured with torture like the torture we were tortured with. For real, Dean, Cass, Sam, and Eileen deserved better. The only thing that came out of this episode was memes. That is the truth. Okay, so I've been reading those for literally just over an hour, and as you could see, there were maybe 4 or 5 that were not 1-star reviews in literally an hour of reading through them. It was bad. It was really bad. But like, we all agree it was bad. I don't understand people who were like, it was good. It was a good ending. I don't know you. I don't know you.